Awesome. Okay, so yeah, thank you for joining for the Rise demo. I'm just going to go over like the basic highlights of how the app works and the major functionality, and that also sort of covers the best practices.
Okay,
So
great.
before I dive in, yeah, Rise is really like I think it's important to sort of cover why we built Rise and in what areas it can help you with. So Rise is really about helping people and you work more efficiently and understand where your time is going. You know, if you were to ask someone like work as much as you can in a single day, they'd probably work 24 hours. If you were to ask them to work as much as they can over a week, right, it's probably working 12 hours a day. But if you were to ask them to work as much as they can over a year or two, you know, they're probably working 8 hours a day with weekends off and just hyper focused during that time period. And so that's what we really want to help people achieve with Rise, is help them work more efficiently and more healthily, which we believe will make you more efficient and more productive. And then also free you up to be really productive and accomplish what you want, but have time to spend with your family and doing things outside of work. So having said that, how Rise works is actually super simple. We basically just track which apps and websites you use on your computer. This data is just for the individual. They can choose to share it with whoever they like, but we don't share that with anybody else. We'll never sell your data. And there's a lot of privacy controls that you can set up if you're worried about that, which I can show you later. Basically, yeah, we're just tracking your apps and websites. We have a very simple data model that we call a tracking event. It has a start time, a stop time. It has an app ID, maybe a URL if it's a browser, and then it has a category. And so categorization is sort of the foundation of Rise, because Rise will have rules that categorize all these different apps and websites into categories. Like Gmail is email, Google Docs is documenting, you know, Zoom is video conferencing, Twitter is social media, etc. And those tracking rules are fully customizable. You can get really granular in it. Rise can be really powerful in that sense. But those rules, which translate your activity into categories, are what all these metrics are built on. So the most important thing to get right when you start using Rise is getting those categories right. But you know, a huge part of Rise as well is that it's fully automatic. So you should never be starting and stopping a timer unless you want to. And once you get that categorization and those configurations up, the beauty of it is that it really runs in the background, and time tracking, you know, manual time tracking is like a full-time job in and of itself. But with Rise, it's just fully automated. You just get the stats and insights. Okay, so going into categorization, the first tab here, as you can see, is the activity tab. So this is going to be where your categories are shown, right? You can see immediately there's some purple blocks here. It looks kind of like a calendar, except this is going to be showing your past history. Each block, if it's big enough, is going to give you a preview of what category you were spending the most time in, maybe the top three if it's split between the two. And that's just to provide you a really visual representation of how you spent your time this day, which is in itself like a huge value prop, I think. You can just glance at this home view and see, okay, I mean, for me, I had a pretty simple day, but I spent some time coding pretty much all day. And then I had stand up and now I'm doing a demo. So that's like sort of the preview. You can hover over any of these blocks and it'll show you the top 5 categories and top 5 apps and websites. If you want to categorize things, well, first you can click on this and you can click view details. That's going to show you all the apps and websites over that time period. Additionally, you can drag and drop and create over a sub block and view the details just for that time period if you want to note particularly during a block. But I'm going to jump over to the category tab really quickly while I go into categorization. So here you're going to see all your categories and your apps and websites. You can click on a category and it will actually show you in your timeline when you were working on that category, which is kind of cool. It's great to spot, like if, Twitter, when it's distracting you, or email. And then you can click on any of these little pencil icons, and it will show you the apps and websites for that specific category. So, customer support, that was Health Scout. You know, productivity, that was Rise and Rise staging. You can do the same thing for apps and websites. So like if I want to see, you know, Warp, I can see Warp, which is my like my terminal app that I use. So if you wanted to recategorize something, you would click into the categorization modal. You'll see the URL if it's a URL or the app name. You'll see a little icon here, which is going to show you whether it was from Windows, Mac OS, or a browser or URL. And then you'll see the category that it's categorized as. If I want to recategorize that, I click on this and the categorization modal will pop up. So here I can recategorize Help Scout. If I want to create a new category, I can do that. I can exclude that from tracking and Rise will never track it again. Or I could select from an existing category, so I could change it to administrative. Once I choose that, I will actually have the option to change and create a rule moving forward. So this means that it's going to change all the time in Help Scout for whatever day I'm looking at. And then any new rules that come in are going to be recategorized as this new category. If I choose this option, it's going to change it for this time period only. So that's sort of like overriding, which means maybe normally Help Scout is customer support, but today it was administrative. You know, maybe this happens with Twitter. You know, normally it's social media, but today it's growth or outreach or LinkedIn or whatever. But keep in mind when you do this, new events, new time spent in this is going to be categorized as the original category. So that's called a category override. If you will see some apps and websites with category overrides because they'll have a little yellow icon. This happens a lot with meetings, which I can talk about later. But yeah, so normally, you know, Twitter and Heroku are categorized as code, but you can see it was overridden as stand-up because it happened during that stand-up meeting. So that's just really the basics of categorization. It's super simple. And we just recommend the first few days, because categories are so important. First few days, just spend like 5 minutes a day reviewing your categories. As the day goes on, or at the end of the day, whatever is easier for you, just look, see what categories are showing up, see what apps and websites. If any of the categories feel off, you know, click into it, see what's in there. And if it doesn't feel right, change it. The other thing is Rise will come with defaults for a lot of common apps and websites, but we don't have all apps and websites yet. So if Rise sees an app or website that we don't have a category for, it's going to get automatically categorized as miscellaneous. Miscellaneous is sort of a special category. It's just all unknown apps or websites are unseen by our predefined rules. If anything in miscellaneous, you don't have to spend the time recategorizing because you're basically not spending enough time in it to make it worth your time, worth your while. However, once you spend enough time, it's about 10 minutes in a day in an app or website that's miscellaneous, Rise is going to automatically recategorize that app and website as uncategorized. And I'm jumping back to the dashboard so I can show you what it looks like when you have uncategorized apps and websites. It's really important to categorize uncategorized apps and websites if you want to get that the configuration set up. The good thing is, you know, normally the first day, 2 days, week, maybe you'll have a few uncategorized apps and websites. But we found that once you get those uncategorized apps and websites categorized, you don't really have to categorize that much anymore. Like, for example, I mean, I have an uncategorized app because I leave it for the demo, but I rarely find myself categorizing a new app or website, maybe like once a month or once every 2 weeks. Okay, so when you do have uncategorized apps and websites, the app will let you know with this kind of annoying pop-up. So the best way to get rid of it is to click view, going to show what websites are uncategorized. And we actually have an AI algorithm that will recommend categorization and why it recommends that, which is pretty cool. So you can see that Rollbar is uncategorized. Rollbar is our error reporting website, and it recommends that we categorize the code with a little write-up. So it's just a super cool little AI feature that we just launched, one of several that we have within the app. Okay, that's the basics around categorization. I was going to say the last thing is you can get very advanced with categories. So next to the category, there's this down arrow. If it's a website, it's going to show you all the URLs and the titles with the linkable URLs that I spent time in. So this was our Help Scout. all the different help chats that I was working in today. I can actually click, you can see 2 minutes in this one. I can click on that categorization modal and recategorize just that event by creating an advanced tracking rule based on the title, the URL. And if I do title or URL, I can match the title partially. So like basically, if I just want to include like, number 1 through 3, I can match the URL fully or partially if I wanted to match like, conversation, the substring. So you can get really advanced. I wouldn't recommend doing that until you have to, but it's there. When you're ready to move to those advanced features or when you feel like you need to, let me know. I'm happy to show you how, or it's also not that confusing. But yeah, it can be really powerful in that sense. And that's I think one of the main differentiators of Rize is that we can get really, we're the most accurate time tracker and we are the most granular and customizable if you want to do that. Last thing I'll show is these are your activity, like tracking events as they come in. So you can actually see all this right here. You can delete it. You can export it from your settings. You have complete control over your data. And then all the tracking rules that you create, you also can see them in your settings. You can edit them. You can delete them here as well. You can filter by category. So yeah, there's a lot you can do with categorizations. It's very, very advanced. Okay. Now jumping back to the home tab, I'm just going to dive into projects. So projects are sort of exactly what they sound like. They are a way to tag projects. I have a project called bug fixes. I have a project called, I have a project called, oops, sorry. I have a project here called, I can have a client project, the ambassador program, auto categorization projects. So yeah, basically you can fully customize projects. You can create a new project by just typing in the project name and hitting enter. And then it will show up in that drop down. Sometimes people ask, so it's pretty simple. Sometimes people wonder between, what should be a category, versus what should be a project. So honestly, it's a little more art than science, but this is a generally solid rule for distinguishing the two. Categories never have end dates. Like code or email or social media, there's never a date in the future when that will end. Not really, like maybe you don't start using it, but the concept of an end date doesn't really exist. Whereas projects do have an end date. So if you're working on a specific feature, if you're working for a specific client, like that's where end dates actually do make sense if you're working on a specific task. And so if it has an end date, it's a project. If an end date doesn't really apply, it's a category. We just added a bunch of really cool advanced features to projects. So I'm just going to show that really quickly. I'm not going to go too much into it, but if you head to the projects tab, you can search your projects, filter them. You can actually see a timeline of your projects and compare them. You can click here if you want to create a client or a task, but I'm going to create a new project here. Here, there's a lot of really cool things you can do with projects now. So you can create a name. You can set a budget hours. Like if you want to spend 10 hours, 20 hours a week, you can set that, basically on a monthly, total, or weekly interval. This is what's really cool too. You can now set keywords for projects. So right now, projects, if you want to tag them, they're manual. So you'd have to go to your home, you'd have to drag and drop, or you can even click on an activity block and click add to project if you want it to line up with that block. You can also click the plus sign at the top of the projects column. But with these auto keywords, Rize will actually, you can add keywords for a specific project. So, if I was NASA and I was working on the James Webb telescope, I could put, James Webb as a keyword, a telescope, or, whichever might work. Or if you're working on a client or a project, you can add those keywords to the project. And if Rize detects that you spent enough time based on the window titles in either of those, it will automatically tag that period of that block of time with a project, which is really cool. Similarly, you can add clients or tasks to projects to add some sense of hierarchy, and the time spent will roll up or roll down. If you click on one of these rows, so like I allocate about 10 hours a month on bug fixes improvements. I click, again, I'll see this sort of cool modal, and I can export that to a PDF if I want to share that with a client. See the week, year, etc. Some cool stats. All right, moving forward, going to sessions. So sessions is, I'd say, one of the most unique parts of Rise. I think one of the ways it really adds value that's a little bit different than a lot of other trackers out there. So sessions are basically, they're roughly based off Cal Newport's mentality of deep work, with sort of our own twist, but sessions come in 3 flavors. These are basically periods of time that we've either designated you as focused, doing deep work, taking a break, or being in a meeting, about like collaborating, right? So sessions, focus, meetings, and breaks can be automatically detected, or manually created. And they can all sort of be automatically detected in different ways. The focus sessions. Focus is super important, super unique, and it's super powerful that Rise can auto detect that. Breaks as well, I'm meeting, but focus is normally where people have the most issues getting it configured correctly. So going back to the categories, why they're so important when it comes to focus is that all categories are going to be marked as a focus and a non-focus category. And if you it's a little more advanced than this, but the basics is that if you spend enough time in focus categories, Rise is going to automatically detect your focus. If you spend too much time in non-focus categories, Rise is not going to detect your focus, and it won't tag that time to a focus period. So how do you configure those settings? If you see that you're not detecting focus when you think it should be, or maybe it is detecting focus when you're not focused, it probably means that your focus categories are not configured correctly. So if you head to general and scroll down to exclude from focus time, you'll see all the non-focus categories here. You can just look at that, and if you look at your data, you'll really understand, okay, I consider email or messaging, let's say, a focus category, and my time spent in that is preventing the creation of focus blocks. So I'm going to remove that from this list. You might also want to recategorize something. Maybe Twitter or LinkedIn for you isn't social media, it's work. It's like outreach or growth or recruiting. So you can also recategorize that app and website to a focus category. Additionally, with breaks, Rise will automatically detect a break if you leave your computer, let it go idle, or if you put your computer to sleep, and there's between a 5 and a 60-minute gap. And then meetings, Rise will automatically detect a meeting if you have a calendar event with 2+ attendees that you've confirmed at. Everything can also be, there's a lot more advanced tools that we can do with your calendar and sessions, but if you have questions, like reach out to me personally, I can dive into that because I know we're running a little long. But I'll just say really quickly, you can automatically create any of these sessions through the timer. So for example, if I click start focus, I can set a goal for a focus session, add project tabs, set a duration, choose focus music that's live streamed. And there's a lot of cool customization like rain, lo-fi beats. But that's sort of if you like. Those are only bonuses. Last thing is your summary total. The only thing it's all sort of explanatory, except the one thing I'll call out is work hours. This is also a huge value prop of Rise. It's one of the reasons that my co-founder and I built the company and built the product, was basically we had no idea how much time we were working. And so how work hours is calculated is also pretty simple. There are work categories and non-work categories, and work hours is basically going to be all the time you spent in work categories, in work categories, plus your break time. You can set a target that you'll get a notification when you reach that around 8 hours. And then you can, of course, edit your work hours in settings, general, exclude from work hours. This is going to show which categories are excluded from work hours. So yeah, this is just the basics. There's a lot more that Rise can do. But as a final thing, I'm going to cover really quickly. We have a lot of keyboard shortcuts. So you can press Command K or Control K if you're on Windows, or click on the command palette. You can, start a break. You can start a focus session. You can navigate the app. Your settings is down here. And then finally, we have the support channel, video tutorials, which are sort of outdated that we need to update. We will soon. A user guide, similarly a little outdated, but a lot of good stuff there. And then a Discord community that we're really active in, a changelog feature request board. And then you can always reach us through the chat or through email. And the chat's just right here in the bottom right. Okay. So that is a high level overview. I know I raced through that. If you have more questions, you can reach out, and I'm going to pause the recording right now.